Good morning. Welcome everybody to our celebration of Buddha's birthday. I stand here feeling a bit anxious for our people joining us via Zoom. I'm not sure whether they can hear us. Unfortunately, somehow this morning, something's playing up in our system. So the benefits are coming in person, I think. With the program this morning, we start with chanting by the Sri Sarada Nuns. Then talk and PowerPoint presentation by our very good friend, Walter Mason. He'll be speaking on Buddhist, sacred spaces and holy people in Buddhist Asia, a personal journey. And he's got a lot to share, I know, under that topic. Walter's a well-known writer, speaker, blogger, and we're very honored to have him here with us and to have him as our dear friend and regular. Followed by Walter's talk. We will have a talk by Pravrajika Gayatriprana, our president. She'll be speaking on Buddha and Advaita Vedanta. After that, we invite you all to stay back and get a share of sweets and savories that are being offered to Buddha. So now I'll invite Walter to give his talk and PowerPoint presentation. Chanting, sorry, yeah, chanting first. Sorry, a bit scattered. By the way, Zooming people, if you can hear, maybe you can, or maybe you'll let me know if you can't hear. It's just from my side, I'm not sure. Okay, nuns, please come.
Namo Namo Buddha Divakaraya Namo Namo Gautama Chandrimaya Namo Namo Ananta Gunanaraya Namo Namo Shakyanandanaya Buddham Sharanam Gacchami Dharmam Sharanam Gacchami Sangham Sharanam Gacchami Buddham Sharanam Gacchami Dharmam Sharanam Gacchami Sangham Sharanam Gacchami Maya Sutavara Gautamam Shuddhodhana Priya Siddhartham Kapila Vastu Putakaram Gopavallabha Shri Buddham Veda Vidamvara Premamayam Satya Gunakara Amitabham Dina Dayamaya Deva Deva Karuna Sagara Kalyanam Janma Jara Vyadhi Nirjitam Kanta Sutta Griha Varjitam Tivratapaklesha Svikritam Nitya Bodhi Sudha Prapitam Jayatu Jayatu Deva Amitabham Jayatu Jayatu Deva Amitabham Jayatu Jayatu Deva Amitabham Jayatu Jayatu Deva Amitabham Shakya Tilaka Kula Shobhitam हिंसाव्रतबीजदूरीभूतम् प्रेममिलय प्रीतिस्थापितं सर्वभूते विभुव्यापितं निर्वाणतत्त्वसुबोधकरं तापदहन सुखविधायकं प्रेमधरणितलसिञ्चित मैत्रीकरुणारसमण्डितम् अष्टमार्गयोगदर्शितं ज्ञाननिधानशुभगोतीतं शुद्धबुद्धपुत तथागतं मङ्गलकर जयनन्दितं जयतु जयतु देव तथागतम् जयतु जयतु देव तथागतम् जयतु जयतु देव तथागतम् जयतु जयतु देव तथागतम् यज्ञविधिश्रुतिनिन्दितं देवयजनपशुदर्शितं विहगवेदनभयमोचित दयाघनयोगिवर पूजितं पूर्णमासि शुभपुण्यदिनं वैशाखी तिथिगतनिर्वाणम् महापरिनिर्वाणलग्नकर जय 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 देव श्रीबुद्धम् जयतु जयतु देव श्रीबुद्धम् जयतु जयतु देव श्रीबुद्धम् जयतु जयतु देव श्रीबुद्ध जयतु जयतु देव श्रीबुद्धम् दीनशरणविभो नमाम्यहम् तापशमन प्रभो भजाम्यहम् प्रेमललितनाथ जानाम्यहम् शान्तिनिलय रूप वदाम्यहम् जयतु जयतु देव अमिताभम् जयतु जयतु देव तथागतम् जयतु जयतु देव श्रीबुद्धम् जयतु जयतु देव श्रीबुद्धम्
My head's been cut off, but I'll adjust that. So good news, the microphone in Zoom is working fine in spite of it not responding when I was testing. Anyway, we won't argue with that. The reason I'm happy about that is we are recording today on Zoom. So it'll be going up onto our Vedanta Society of New South Wales YouTube channel later. And we really didn't want to lose it with Walter being our special guest. So Walter, now I invite you to give your talk and PowerPoint presentation. That's all.
Good morning, everyone. That's perfect, I think. Step back. Welcome, and I give my respects to the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, and I honor Sri Ramakrishna, the Holy Mother, Sri Sarada Devi, and Swami Vivekananda, and the presence of our venerable mothers here. With your indulgence, I would like to take you through a few memories of our of a lifetime really spent studying Buddhism and visiting many points of Buddhist pilgrimage, including some of the ones that have become important maybe just to me and a very few select people. But more about that in just a moment. I think that Buddhist places are so great teachers. Oh, great! Thank you. Great teachers and being in beautiful holy spaces can really change us and can re-inspire us to try harder in our spiritual lives. This is just last year, almost a year ago. It was during Vesak last year when I was in Vietnam, and I'm just headed to Vietnam again tomorrow for my sort of 6-week sabbatical. So I'm rather excited. And I was sitting out on the veranda of a temple which is on the river. So it's summer, of course, in Vietnam, very, very hot. And sitting on the veranda by the river and enjoying the breeze, when this young monk came along and just started to arrange the flowers, the special flowers for the Buddha's birthday celebrations. And I just was marveling, and what a moment of beauty and wonder it was, just to be able to capture this everyday act. And it was done with such care and such reverence and such beauty. And despite the heat, he never once broke a sweat, which was very impressive to me. It was sort of it was a lovely moment, and it went for hours and hours and hours. And in fact, I often find transcendence in places just like this. This is one of our neighborhood temples in Ho Chi Minh City. It's marooned in an island surrounded by these immense roads with traffic, uncontrollable traffic. It's just happened over the years. The roads are slowly cut off, so you have to risk your life just to get to the temple. But it's a very special place of respite, I think, because of that, because it is this sort of island, a literal island in a sea of traffic. And the moment you duck through its doors, you can be quiet, you can be transported. The noise of the traffic is still there, but somehow it's not so important, because you're carrying instantly this sort of this sense, this feeling that you're in somewhere that's holy and special. And you can stay there as long as you want. Some people stay there all day long, and no one's ever going to harass you or move you along, because this is everybody's space that's been created by monastic communities in honor of Buddha. And when you spend time in a working monastery, you get to see all sorts of extraordinary things, like a monk 3 floors up, standing perilously on a rail, wearing flip-flops in order to clean the chandeliers, which inexplicably hang in the open. So you've got this wonderful display of chandeliers which need to be constantly cleaned. And you realize that you're enjoying this moment of transcendence because of the little works and jobs being done by people like this. And if you get there at the right time in the evening, you can hear the monk sounding the bell for people to come to evening prayers. And this is sort of a 20-minute procedure where the monk slowly sounds the bell, and people in the surrounding streets can hear it and think, oh, now's the time to come to prayers. And I've got to say, not many people do come to prayers, but still the effort is made. And it's quite wonderful to be there, because I'm always the only person there so early, and the vibration of the bell goes right through me, and it goes right through the monk and everything that's in that room, and it's like a sort of intimate sound bath that's happening, and you feel a part of the place, but more importantly, you feel a part of the purpose of being there. It's all free, and it's all sort of an exquisite moment. But beautiful things and moments can happen quite unexpectedly. You see this photograph that I took of a beautiful lotus pond, and you imagine it's on some mountain fastness, perhaps a beautiful lotus pool in a nunnery in an exquisite remote spot. But actually, this photograph was taken in one of those ghastly roadside restaurants that buses take you to break your long trips, and you're meant to buy a gift and an overpriced snack while you're there. And for some reason, they've cultivated this lotus pond with the most beautiful lotuses I've ever seen in my life. And I just thought, what a wonderful discovery. I needn't be grumpy about this enforced stop, because something beautiful is waiting there for me. When I travel, I always make it a personal commitment to be pleasantly surprised, at least 8 times a day. So that means I'm always looking out for that sort of pleasant surprise. And often they come, but not always in multiples of 8. Now, sorry, I was pointing it the wrong way. Here we go. Here's a little novice, Kotam. She was She's a novice at a Buddhist nunnery, and it's quite an amazing story because she was left outside the gates of the nunnery in a little box, probably about 3 in the morning, because the young nuns get up sort of just after that to open up the monastery and get it ready for morning prayers at 4. And they opened it up, and here was this little baby in a box, and the neighborhood dogs were already circling the box. So it was quite a dangerous thing to have happen. This lovely, lovely little girl was taken into the nunnery, and it's Vietnam. There's no state-run orphanages. There's no departments to deal with these children. The nuns simply had to take care of this little baby. Unfortunately, the nun belongs to this woman, my dear friend, Sister Truth. And she's an absolutely wonderful person, a brilliant woman. She's got a PhD in Buddhist studies, but she's gone back to Vietnam, and she runs this tiny little nunnery on the outskirts of the city. And here she is with some of the young trainee nuns that are there at the temple. Most of these girls were sort of left at the temple in various stages from various sort of broken homes, because the nuns were trusted with the care of these children. And I must say, and I know the sisters will know all about this, but these young girls aren't expected to become nuns when they reach sort of their age. They're always given a choice, and very many of them choose not to. They decide religious life is not for them, and they move on to living somewhere else. But the care is given to them without any expectations. And this Sister Truth is just one of the thousands and thousands of nuns in the city who do this sort of job, and monks too. I've got to add, young boys get left at places, and they do all of this unofficial charity work in order to keep their communities together and strong, and to provide welfare when it's needed. This is unsung charity work, caring for the orphaned, the disabled, the destitute, and the elderly. There's a lot of older people who turn up at the gates of these places and go into the community and are cared for. But actually, I wanted to read you a little excerpt from one of my books where I was talking to Sister Truth about this little girl that had been left to the nunnery. When she first asked me who her mother was, I told her it was me, said Sister Truth. Lately, she's been going to infant school, and after mixing with the other children there, she came home one day and asked me who her father was. I told her it was the Buddha. I told her I loved the Buddha so much that he gave me a special child, and that was her. She called the little novice over, stroking her top knots, and she absently asked her, "Who is your mother, child?" "The abbess," cried the little girl, throwing her arms around the sister. "And your father?" "Mr. Buddha," she cried, pointing towards the prayer hall. "I don't know if I've done the wrong thing," said Sister, switching to English so the child could not hear. Her eyes filled with tears. "I think she knows the truth, but she is so small I cannot tell her. What would you do?" And I was struck with that question, because me, of all people, have absolutely no idea what I would do in this situation. It just goes to show the great strength of these people, given them by their training, by their learning and training in meditation and practice of meditation and recitation, and all of these things are based on this ancient Buddhist path. This is another great friend of mine. I call him the easy riding monk. This is Te Wang Tuka, and he's quite good on the motorcycle. These days, he's quite an austere abbot of a Zen monastery, which is actually on a mountain in central Vietnam, in a remote village. He's another interesting person who went to India, got his PhD in Buddhist studies, and was expected to come back to Vietnam and to become an administrator, perhaps an abbot of a big and prestigious city temple. But instead, he went into the countryside because he felt he could do more important work among the people in the countryside. And this is the unforgiving road that we must ride along in order to get to his temple. Now, it looks bad enough, him sitting there on the motorcycle alone, but you've got to imagine that I'm also sitting behind him with my luggage. So it adds a not insignificant amount of weight to the load. and he has to carry it all. It's a pretty tough trip, I've got to tell you. And there it is. That's how it takes hours to get there, to climb up that little mountain that you see in order to get to the top and to his hermitage. And when we were going there once, the tire of his motorcycle blew out, and so there was nothing we could do. There was no repair shops along here. He said, I'll just have to push it back to town and get it fixed. And we weren't here, we were back further, which was this strange vast space of sand which had been created because the government was trying to develop this area. And so he dropped me there. It was about 40 degrees and there was nothing, there's no shade anywhere. And I said, I'll be fine here, actually thinking that I would die in this place. And the poor man, had to push this motorcycle back to town. And I was sitting there with my luggage in the middle of nowhere. And this strange sort of shack, which I hadn't noticed before, a door flew open and this man came tearing out of it and said, come with me. He picked up my bags and took me back to the shack. And the shack was containing this half-submerged sort of dwelling under the ground, which were filled with these men who were workers digging up the roads, working the equipment, and they were all sort of very tough, gnarled men, and one of them was cooking, and all the rest just sat around and stared at me as a strange, exotic creature, and lunch was made, and very kindly they offered me lunch and they offered me beer, and I refused both of those things. And finally, the terrifying man who'd taken me in, he sort of scolded all of them and said, didn't you see who dropped him off? The monk from over the hill. Respect this man's religion. And he gave me a great big bunch of bananas to dine on instead. But it was such a kindness, because they could have stayed hidden there and watched me sort of quavering and quivering. But because of their respect for this monk that lives on the hill, they took care of me. They took good care of me, and as a stranger as well. And finally, we arrive at the temple, which is so, so beautiful. But it had been an exhausting trip, and I had a headache, and I didn't want to go to evening prayers, which were on within 5 minutes of our arriving back. I got very grumpy. And I said, I'm not going in. I sat on the veranda because it was cool. And there was quite a lot of people crammed into the prayer hall to say their prayers. And I sat and listened to them instead. And at some point in the liturgy, there was a moment where they bless the people in their community. So they bless those who are sick or those who have died recently. They bless their nation. They bless people who might be suffering in the world. And throughout this sort of sing-songy Vietnamese, which I'm mostly ignoring, I suddenly hear them sing this beautiful blessing. Well, actually, just the abbot did it. And he said, and we bless Walter Mason from Australia. And I was carried away by this blessing. My headache was lifted. And I thought, what a generous and beautiful gift that is. It's a blessing I will carry with me always. And here is the beautiful statue of Kuan Yin at this temple. So when I look up the terraced cliffs of this temple, I always see her every morning, and I'm cheered and I'm lifted, because she's the bodhisattva of compassion. And she reminds me every morning that this is the goal of this life, for me at least, to sort of exercise as much compassion as humanly possible, despite my frequent failures. And there's my cell, which is, it's got everything that I need. It's kind of nice, actually. And I sleep on that sort of hard, flat wooden bed. And, after about 4 or 5 days, my back gets used to it. But you see, once I look out of my door, this is what I see. And it makes it all worth it. I look out over these cliffs, over this tiny little town, which nobody knows about, and yet in which everyone is so sweet and beautiful and generous. And it runs all the way down to the ocean. So these are the ocean gates there. So there's this beautiful air that I'm constantly breathing. And it's always fascinating. I love the stories of the community, because they don't always fall in line with sort of orthodox Buddhism. People love to tell stories and create their own. And this is the Hall of the Dead in the temple. Here there is a statue of the Bodhisattva of the underworld. And here people leave photos of loved ones who have died, or urns with their ashes. It's an essential part of any sort of large Buddhist temple. And there's a wonderful woman who comes to cook at the temple every day, and she arrives very, very early, again 3 or 3:30. And she always tells us that when she looks up at the Hall of the Dead, the lights are on and she can hear people chatting and partying. She says the dead are partying in the Hall of the Dead in the night when we don't know it. And I always sort of lift an eyebrow when I hear this story. And I look at my friend, the monk, who's got a PhD in Buddhist studies. And he goes, "Oh, what do I know?" He says, "I've never heard it." He said. But then he says something interesting. "It doesn't matter to me whether the dead party unseen at night, because I have my own salvation to look out for." So here are the two qualities again on the cliff. You see Kuan Yin, the Bodhisattva of compassion, right at the front. And then at the top of the hill, you have Maitreya, the Buddha of the future. So we have love, compassion, and then hope and generosity as well, which are all wonderful things to be reminded of on a day-to-day basis. Now, just like the Virgin Mary, Kuan Yin is often worshipped in grottos. And so I seek these grottos out as I travel. And this is a very famous one in Vietnam. It's interesting because it used to be a roadside shrine, which was very popular. And the government wanted to clear unofficial sort of things in that area. So that they said, look, we're knocking this down and we're going to bury this statue. And a local temple came forth and took the statue and built this grotto. And it's become incredibly popular day and night. People flock to this place to make their prayers to Kuan Yin, and also to remind themselves of any need they might have for love and compassion in their lives. And we all have that. And so people go here and they make pledges. They say, look, if my mother gets better, I will shave my head, observe vegetarianism for a year, remain celibate for a year, go to temple every day for a year, all sorts of things like that. Normally, well, not normally, but prayers aren't always answered and things don't always turn out the way we hope they would. But this period of intensified practice and reminder of spirituality helps us in those occasions when we need it most. So I never pour scorn on the actions of these people because I know that they give them hope. And I know that our understandings are across a spectrum, and we all need different things. Sri Ramakrishna said that throughout the ages, many monks, devotees, and perfected souls have visited sacred places to see God and call on him wholeheartedly, shunning all other desires. That is why there is a special manifestation of God in these places. And in all the pushing and shoving and things that I don't understand, I'm always reminded that my own feelings and experiences don't always have to take center stage. And I think this is why pilgrimage and travel is always good for us, because it reminds us of this. Because if we're in a place where no one understands us and we don't really understand what's going on, if we just stand there and shout, it's not going to help. No one's going to help us, 90% of people will just nod and smile and accept what's happening. Let these things wash over them. And I always find that that's very healthy for me, because I am reminded, and it's a bitter reminder, that I am not the most important person in the world. And that's good. That's good. And I'm also reminded not to look at all the things other people are doing and look for annoyances among them, because I'll find them. If I'm searching for them, I'll find them. Sri Sarada Devi, the Holy Mother, one of the last things she says was, if you want peace, do not look into anybody's faults. Rather, look into your own faults. Learn to make the world your own. No one is a stranger, my child. The whole world is your own. Such beautiful words to carry with us, not just as we travel, but as we travel through our everyday lives. In Vietnam, bells are important. And in Vietnam, one doesn't strike a bell. So English sometimes has some very violent language. But in Vietnam, you invite the bell to sound. And I always love this distinction. And even more so, before people invite the bell to sound, they will rub the mallet against the bell in a small sort of a movement to wake up the bell. So the bell isn't violently woken up in that way, just to say, look, I'm about to knock this against you, get ready. And so I'm always looking at temple bells when I'm in Vietnam. They're often very old and they're often very, very beautiful things indeed. So often when a temple is built, that's often one of the most expensive investments that they make for the temple. And I love the practice that people have in Vietnam of pasting their prayers to the bell. Because what happens in most temples, if they have enough people these days, is that in the afternoon at about 2 o'clock, a senior member of the community will come and sit with the bell for half an hour or 40 minutes and just sound the bell. Every few moments, they will softly sound the bell, and this rings out over the community. And I remember once a monk invited me to visit a nearby temple to listen to the bell. And I was wondering what on earth this was going to entail. And I thought, well, it must be a euphemism for something else. So I turned up and we sat in the garden and we listened to the bell for 40 minutes without saying a word to each other. And it was one of the most exquisite afternoons of my life. And I recommend it to anyone just to sit and listen to the bell. But of course, because the bell is sounding, the vibrations are perhaps echoing through these little pieces of paper where people have written out their heartfelt desires and prayers and torments and search for answers, and they go out all over the world. There's another one that you can see. Sadly, this practice is actually dying out because many of the temples have realized that these bells are very, very important and expensive antiques, and that having things glued onto them may not be the best way to preserve them, which I understand, but I also think it's sad to see this old tradition die out. But the monks and nuns inspire me, their energy, their dedication, their willingness to adopt a life of poverty in a time and a culture which no longer necessarily sort of endorses that or celebrates it. I love the things that I encounter day to day. This is in one monk's room, and he's airing out his prayer robes. So you see, day to day, they'd wear something like that, like the brown pajamas. But then when they go into prayer, they put on the orange robe, which indicates that now they're putting on the official costume of Buddhism. And once this robe is on, then they really represent the Buddha himself. And so they act differently, they're spoken to differently, and it's beautiful to see and do. And I just love seeing them fluttering there in the window and reminding everyone of their importance. There's a wonderful, very impressive marble statue of Kuan Yin in that temple I showed you before that is marooned in an island, and that's it there. It's rather large, and people come to it all day long with their prayers, or just to have a moment of quietness in their busy day. So there's a lot of office workers who go there at the middle of the day. And it reminds me of a story in the Buddhist sutras. There was a supernatural being that saw how much the Buddha shone. And so one day he decided to go down to the Buddha and ask him about why he shone. And this supernatural being was very proud of himself and said, well, I have many blessings. I have palaces and wives and beautiful things. And the Buddha said to him, blessings are important, he said. And the supernatural being said, well, what blessings do you think you have? And the Buddha said, I have the blessing not to associate with the foolish, but to associate with the wise, which is a beautiful blessing indeed, and one we're enjoying this morning. Other blessings that he listed were to be generous in giving, to be respectful, humble, contented, and grateful. All wonderful blessings. And as you can see with this quote from the Sutta Nipata, we should cultivate a limitless heart with regard to all beings. This limitless heart is something that's already in us. It's something that we carry with us constantly. It has so many names and so many different traditions, but it's the goal. And more than the goal, it's the truth. And we just have to embrace it and love it. And just before I leave you today, I wanted to leave you with the memory of my great teacher, Thich Nhat Hanh, who I'm sure many of you here are familiar with. And if you haven't read any of his books, they're well worth reading. But he's an absolutely wonderful, wonderful person. And I was lucky enough to do a retreat with him, and he was very vigorous, even though he was in his 80s, and led us on long, long walking retreats, which tired me, but which he sort of tirelessly went on. And he was a very famous monk who transformed a lot of people, originally from Vietnam, but spent most of his life living and teaching in the West. But Thich Nhat Hanh's big message, and one that I think went forth into the world and which carries on now, and which I think that we're working on here today, is that you don't practice just as an individual, because you realize very soon on the path of practice that you should practice with community if you want the transformation and healing to take place more quickly. We need to be with each other. We need to rub up against each other, experience the blessings of wonderful people, and have our rough patches soothed by the blessings of those people who are more difficult and challenging. They're all there for an important reason, and we're all here for an important reason. I always urge people to go out, to mix with others, to be curious and to meet others, and to expand your hearts and your minds and your souls, because that way we grow, and that way we move towards transformation and healing much more quickly. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Walter. I particularly enjoyed that because I've been rereading your two books on Cambodia and Vietnam, and now I've got some images, some of the incidents you alluded to. I've got images now of those. That was very nice. All right, so I now invite Gayatriprana to give a talk.
Thank you, Walter. It was wonderful. I'm sure all of us enjoyed. We really enjoyed. It was wonderful. Thank you so much. In the long line of great teachers and godmen, reformers that Hinduism had, we can say Gautama Buddha is the first historical person. The other great teachers like Sri Krishna or other sages, we don't have much historical information. And Buddha is closer to the Upanishadic age than all the other great teachers. According to Swami Vivekananda, Buddha is the fulfillment of the spiritual thought of the Upanishads, which had preceded him. The Upanishads, see, I'm talking more about Upanishad than Buddha because my topic is Buddha and Advaita Vedanta. The Upanishads held the view that the world that we know, whether the external world or the internal world, has no intrinsic reality. The reality belongs to the knower, what they call Brahman, the Atman. When that intrinsic reality within human beings, we call it Atman. And when it is on the supreme, as considered as a supreme spirit of the universe, we call it Brahman. And to know that Atman and Brahman are identical, that is the salvation or freedom or liberation or nirvana. Till a person attains that realization, he or she is subject to birth, death, rebirth. It goes on and governed by the law of karma, cause and effect. It goes on. Buddha also accepts the idea that universe is not real and everything in the universe is subject to change, governed by the law of karma. According to Buddha, everything in the universe is in a state of flux, constantly changing. And because the world is constantly changing, he does not say that whether it is real or unreal, but he says it is somewhere in between the real and the unreal. And the Buddhist text give the example of a torch being whirled at great speed. And it gives the impression of a circle of fire. But the circle of fire is an illusion. It's not there. Because of the constant change, it appears like a cycle of fire. So what Buddha says is that permanency of our experience, that we experience the day-to-day life, the sense experiences are also illusion, just like the circle of fire. They are not permanent. They are constantly changing. And this idea is very similar to the Vedantic idea of Maya. We experience this world. We enjoy all the pleasures of the world because of Maya. And what is Maya? We cannot make a definite definition or description of Maya. About Maya, Shankaracharya, the great Advaitic teacher, in his book Vivek Juramani says, Maya is neither existent nor non-existent, nor partaking of both characters. It is neither existent nor non-existent, nor partaking both characters. Neither same, nor different, nor both. Neither composed of parts, nor an indivisible whole, nor both. So it's complete paradox. We cannot say what Maya is. It's all, they speak only in terms of paradox. Now, is there any reality, something permanent behind this ever-changing flux? That is the quest of all philosophy and all religion. Buddha was not interested in expounding the philosophy of flux, but he concentrated on the philosophy of how to get out of this flux or enable one to escape this flux. Buddha asserted that we can escape the sorrow and suffering by cessation of the flux when we attain peace of mind, higher wisdom, and enlightenment and nirvana. Now, Buddha observed a noble silence, they say. That's the term they use, Buddhist text. He observed noble silence concerning some of the crucial questions regarding self, nirvana, etc. So his followers in later generation interpreted in different ways because he didn't say anything. He didn't say anything definite. So they interpreted in their own ways, their own understanding. And it is said that in 200 years after Buddha's time, 18 different sects grew up offering different interpretation. And some of the so-called Western scholars think that Buddha did not know whether there is anything beyond this universe of appearance. So according to them, he was an agnostic. He didn't know. He studied the prevalent ideas of his time, but did not come to a clear conclusion. That is the idea of some scholars. Some others say that Buddha knew that there is nothing beyond this empirical universe. So he denies there is any absolute reality, and nirvana is just annihilation. So Buddha is a nihilist or a pessimist. These are all the different views. What does nirvana literally means? Literally, nirvana means extinction. And what is nirvana extinction? The desires and attachments that we have. That desires and attachment which binds a person. He is extinguishing that bondage. In the words of Houston Smith, the author of the famous book, The World's Religions, he says, nirvana negatively means the state in which faggots of private desire have been completely consumed and everything that restricts the boundless life has died. That's the negative aspect. Affirmatively, it is boundless life itself. See, nirvana from both sides. You can say from the negative side, it is destruction of all desires and removing the bondage. From the positive side, it is a boundless life. What in Vedanta says existence. Buddha also did not say what, and Buddha did not say, clearly define nirvana, because when you try to define something, it's limiting. And it's possible only for something which is within the limits of time, space, and causation. Something which is beyond time and space and causation, how can you define it? You cannot. It's the Upanishad says, it's avang manasagocharam, is beyond mind, speech. How can you to define something? We have to bring it within our mind. Which something which is beyond mind, how can you define? You can't. So that's why Buddha kept quiet. He described it only as the state in which sensations and ideas have ceased to be. And again, in the state in which the sage is delivered from time. That means the stage goes beyond time. And this, that state of shunyata. And shunyata is often wrongly translated as nothingness. But it really means the absence of subject-object relation. That's all. But they described this as nothingness. This is very similar to the state of turiya described in the Mandukya Upanishad, which is an out-and-out Advaitic text. The nirvana of Buddhist text and turiya of Advaita are very similar. The Mandukya Upanishad says, turiya is not subjective experience, nor objective experience, nor experience intermediate between the two. See, it's not subjective experience, nor objective experience, nor experience between the two. Nor is it a negative condition which is neither consciousness nor unconsciousness. It is pure unitary consciousness wherein awareness of the world and of multiplicity is completely obliterated. Thus we see that nirvana and turiya both refer to consciousness itself. Beyond all awareness of multiplicity, flux, relativity. But there's more to that. Irving Babbitt of Harvard University says, one should add that nirvana here and now of the Buddhists has much in common with release in this life, that is Jivan Mukti of the Hindu philosopher. Jivan Mukti, liberated in life. Now, liberation is not after you die, on the next life. No, liberation here, liberated in life. Jivan Mukti. You're free, liberated, and self-realized in this life. And nirvana of the Buddhists and Jivan Mukti of Advaita are similar, identical. Both refer to the release from the bondage of karma and ignorance and attainment of that reality which is within, as they call the kingdom of heaven within. Buddha did not describe nirvana because according to him, it's a state of it is incomprehensible, indescribable, inconceivable, unutterable. But he made a positive, affirmative statement about that. He said, it is bliss. Yes, bliss, my friends, is nirvana, is bliss. The same as Brahman. Brahman, we say, absolute bliss. Brahman is absolute existence, absolute consciousness, absolute bliss. Nirvana is absolute bliss. That's what the words of the Upanishads. You cannot describe it. Eto vacho nivartande aprapya manasasaha. The words go there and return along with mind, unable to reach it. The Kena Upanishad says, the eye does not go there, nor speech, nor mind. We do not know Brahman to be such and such. Hence, we are not aware of any process of instructing about it. The teacher, the student has come to asking the teacher to describe or teach about, give instruction about Brahman. The teacher says, eye does not go there, speech does not go there, the mind do not know. So how can we instruct about that? All they can say is what Brahman is not. What Brahman is, nobody can say. They can only say what Brahman is not. So they describe in terms of paradox, like it is subtler than the subtle, greater than the great. While stationary, it travels afar, it goes everywhere. While sleeping, it goes everywhere. It is soundless, touchless, colorless, undiminishing, tasteless, orderless, without beginning, without end. It is supreme, unspeakable bliss. So how, doesn't make any sense. We try to understand everything with our mind. This is something which is beyond mind. So it is not, you cannot understand intellectually. You have to experience it. All they say is, not this, not this. Brahman is not this, Brahman is not this. Sri Ramakrishna says in the same thing, what Brahman is, none can describe in words. Then he, with his very usual way, he says, all things in the world, the Vedas, the Puranas, the Tantras, the 6 systems of philosophy have been defiled, like food touched by the tongue, because they have been uttered. The only one thing which has not been polluted, which has not been defiled, is Brahman, because nobody has ever been able to describe what Brahman is. Now, what about the atoms? When you say Brahman is existence, knowledge, bliss, absolute, we always say Brahman is, what is Brahman? Brahman is existence, knowledge, bliss, absolute. Is it not description of Brahman? Or then Sri Ramakrishna says, it's like describing the ocean. Suppose a person has never seen ocean, and you want describe ocean to that person. How will you say? Oh, the waves, the sound, the spray. Does it make any idea? Does it give any idea of what ocean is to you? Our description of Brahman is just like that. When we describe Brahman, existence, knowledge, bliss, absolute, it's like describing the ocean in these words. You experience it, you know what it is. And there's another reason why Buddha kept silence as far as describing about nirvana. His idea was to find means to remove suffering. He was not interested in intellectual speculations, philosophical speculation. He wanted to find the means how to get rid of the suffering, how to help people get over the suffering. Because the first noble truth, he says, life is suffering. But everybody knows life is suffering. We may try, we put on a very happy face, but life is suffering. Even when we enjoy happiness, we are afraid it will come to an end. That fear is back deep down in the mind. So his idea was to remove the suffering, and the cause of suffering is, according to him, is craving, excessive desire, or tanha as is called. And when that desires are removed, suffering comes to an end. He was interested only in that, how to remove the suffering, how to eliminate desires which cause suffering. Upanishad says the same thing. When all desires of one's heart fall off, then a mortal becomes immortal and he attains Brahman here, not after death. You don't have to wait for death to attain Brahman. You attain Brahman here. That's what called Jivan Mukti. And we overcome these desires by leading a ethical, moral life and thus purifying the mind. Discussing doctrine won't do that. It only distracts us from the goal of how to overcome the suffering. So Buddha refused to speak about the nature of reality because people have got the tendency to reason about it, debate about it, make a big philosophy out of it, and go away from the goal of getting over the suffering, finding the means to get over the sufferings. One of his monks asked him this question: what is the nature of soul? What happens after life? What's the nature of the universe? Buddha kept quiet. This monk asked few times, and in the end, in frustration, he gave Buddha an ultimatum. If you don't give me a proper answer, I'll leave the order. And Buddha took him to task for trying to blackmail him and gave this famous parable of poisoned arrow. Suppose a person was hit by a poisoned arrow. Now, seeing him being hit by the arrow, other people came to pull it out and help him. He said, no, don't pull out the arrow. First, I had to know who shot the arrow. Whether the person is short or tall, whether the person is fat or lean, whether the person belongs to the Brahmin, Kshatriya, or the four castes, whether he is working in this particular work or what his job is, and then what sort of wood was used to make the arrow. Is a reed or thick wood? What sort of bow was used? What was used for the bowstring? Before that, I won't let you pull out the arrow. If you find all the answers to that, by that, in the meantime, the man will be dead. So that's a famous example that he gave. You go on speculating all about all these things, your life is gone and you are dead. Then again, you're being born again and dying again. It's gone on and on and on. Instead, focus on the means of getting out of this suffering. First, pull out the arrow, and then you can think about all these things. But first, if you want to find all the answers to all these questions, and then pull out the arrow, you'll be already gone, dead. Commenting about this, Houston Smith says, Buddha's practical program was exacting, and he was not going to let his disciples be diverted from the hard road of practice into fields of fruitless speculation. We all love to speculate. We want to reason out, argue, debate. But how many are ready to put into practice? All this speculating and reasoning won't lead us anywhere. It's fruitless. Hard practice is what's necessary. All the great teachers said the same thing. You practice. Shankaracharya says this debating argument about the high truths and everything is for enjoyment. That's all. He says, Bhuktaye nadu muktaye. All these arguments is for enjoyment of the scholars. But that won't lead to freedom or liberation. That is why the Upanishad says, give up vain talk, for it brings weariness to the tongue. All this discussion, debate about the high ideals, nature of reality, universe, soul, it's all vain talk. You practice. Sri Ramakrishna calls it counting the twigs and branches and leaves. The number of branches, number of twigs, number of leaves on the trees. You have come to the mango orchard, eat the mangoes, enjoy the fruit. Instead, you go around counting the trees, the branches, how many branches are there, how many thousands of twigs are there, how many millions of leaves are there. Useless. You are not going anything. You are simply wasting your time and energy. And more than his teachings, Buddha's life comes closer to the ideals of the Upanishads. His life of renunciation. Buddha, the Upanishad says, Tyage naige amrutattva manishu. Only through renunciation, one attains immortality. When Siddhartha, the young prince, lived in the palace, always surrounded by all sorts of luxuries and comforts imaginable, both physical and intellectual pleasures, he felt the persistent call to fulfill his spiritual destiny. And one day, the father made sure that he didn't see any suffering in the world. But it is unavoidable because he had this special destiny, spiritual destiny, and he saw the 4 signs. First, old age, then disease, then death, and finally, an ascetic with a calm, serene mind, serene expression on his face. And that made the decision, or decided for him what his path is. Not a life of enjoying the pleasures, but he decided to go on the path of spirituality. So it's the book Buddha and Gospel of Buddhism gives this description. The night before he left, Siddhartha went to his father, the king, and said, "Sir, the time is at hand for my going forth. Do not hinder me, but permit me to depart." Then the king replied, "Tell me whatever you desire, and I'll give that to you, whatever needed to change your purpose." The father did not want him to go, to become a monk. Siddhartha's replied, "I desire 4 things. Please grant them. First, to remain forever in possession of the fresh color of youth. That means he wants to remain young forever. Second, that sickness may never attack me. Third, that my life may have no term. And fourth, I may not be subject to decay." When the king heard these words, he was overcome by grief, for the prince desired what it was not possible for a man to bestow. Can anybody say that you will not become old, you won't get any illness, sickness, that you won't die? No, nobody can guarantee that. It is because it is bound to happen. Siddhartha continued, "If then I cannot avoid old age, sickness, death, and decay, grant at least this one thing, that when I leave this world, I may never more be subject to rebirth." Because according to Hinduism, if you are born, you will die. And if you have died, you will be reborn. The Gita Shri Krishna says, "Jatasya dhruva mrityu, dhruvam janma mritasya." That's the only thing certain in this world. If you are born, you will die. And till you get freedom, if you are dead, you will be born again. So Siddhartha is asking, grant that I may never more be subject to rebirth. The father cannot guarantee that. And when the king could give no better answer, he granted his son's desire. He could not say that, yes, you won't be reborn. No, he cannot say. So what to do? He has to allow him to leave the world and accept the monasticism. So Buddha's renunciation is spoken of as the great renunciation because he had something to renounce. He had health, wealth. He was going to be the future king. He had the vast kingdom. He had he was a young man full of health, youth. He had a beautiful wife, and a newborn baby was just born. So what more you want? You got everything. But when he was told that a son was born to him, he did not rejoice. He thought another bondage has come. So he gave the name to the child, Rahula, means another hindrance. And if you don't have anything, what will you renounce? It's a funny incident when a young man came to Swami Vivekananda saying that, oh, I want to become a monk. Swamiji looked at the young man up and down, found that he is sickly, don't have any health, and not much education. So Swamiji asked, what can you do? Can you tell a lie? He said, no. Can you steal? He got shocked. I have come to become a monk and you're asking whether you can tell, lie or steal. Then Swamiji said, you don't have anything. What have you got to renounce? Have you got any strength in the body? No. Have something to renounce. If you don't have anything to renounce, what will you renounce? I want to make a big donation to the charity, but I don't have a cent with me. It's like they have something to renounce, have something to give up, have health, wealth, intellectual capacity, nothing is there. But Siddhartha had everything. He had everything. That's why his renunciation is called the great renunciation, the great going out. Not that he did not love his wife and child. The book says, before leaving the house, he tiptoed to the chamber where his wife was sleeping with the baby to have a last look at them and then left. But his love and compassion for the suffering was great. Renunciation of the world and leading a monastic life, a meditative life, was a well-established pattern in India from the time of the Upanishads. And the aim is to realize the self. But that's not for everybody. It's only bold, free spirits can follow this path of renunciation. That is why the Katha Upanishad says, it is hard to cross. Just sharp, like the edge of sharp edge of a razor. This renunciation of Siddhartha was a great event in the human history. That's why it's called a great renunciation, and has left a definite mark on the religious life of India. Just a few words of what some of the great spiritual people have said about Buddha's ideas of nirvana and Advaita Vedanta. I just come to close that. Swami Ranganathananda says, Buddha exemplifies in his person the ideal man of the Upanishads and the man of steady wisdom of the Bhagavad Gita. The ideal man of Upanishads and the man of steady wisdom. In the second chapter of the Gita, we can see man of steady wisdom, Sthita Prajna, the characteristics he has given in the Krishna. All that we see in the life of Buddha. That's why he says, Buddha exemplifies in his person the ideal man of the Upanishad and the man of steady wisdom of the Gita. Buddha did not claim that he taught something new. He has brought a new path. No, he didn't say. He said he is following the path which has taught by the earlier, those sages and saints who have seen. So he says, I have seen the ancient way, the old road that was taken by the formerly all awakened. And that is the path I follow. They have already walked along that path. They awakened the illumined people. I am following that way. He did not say that he is teaching us something new. So Swami Vivekananda says, every one of Buddha's teachings is founded in the Vedantas. He was one of those monks who wanted to bring out the truth hidden in those books and in the forest monasteries. It was these great teachings was in the monastery, made in the monasteries. Buddha brought it out to the world. And in modern time, Swami Vivekananda did exactly the same. He brought out the Advaitic teachings, which was kept in the Upanishads, confined to only a few scholars and Brahmins. He brought out to all of us. That's because of Swamiji's work that we are able to learn all these things. We got this opportunity. Thank you.
We'll have the yoga classes coming Thursday. There'll be the fortnightly spiritual evening discussion on Friday night led by Gayatriprana. And next Sunday, Gayatriprana will continue a series of talks, the second one on the prerequisites for spiritual life. Now you're invited to stay back and get a share of the sweets and savories. Thanks for attending today, and thanks to those joining us via Zoom.